welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly. This is She Reads. Today I'm going to be going through my October wrap-up, and I had probably my best month, I think definitely my best month on Booktube. Probably the best month for books that I've read in years, because before I started Booktube, I didn't read nearly as much as I do now. So Booktube has definitely helped me in reading, and this month, I think mostly thanks to Booktubeathon, I read 10 books. Like, what? That is a lot for me. Anyways, I don't understand how people like have these monthly wrap-ups where they're like, I read 27 books. How? Did you do anything else at all that entire month? I don't understand that, but good for them. But that is not my case. So I participated in Spookathon this month. I had so much fun with it. It was my first real readathon that I actually participated in fully, other than my fail of a Booktubeathon participation this summer, which I didn't really end up even doing. But I digress. Spookathon, I did awesome at. I completed all the challenges, and I vlogged my entire way through it. If you want to go and see it, I will link the playlist down below. But in any case, let's just get to it. I do want to mention also that while I'm filming this, it is like raining and disgusting and so dark outside. Like, it looks like it's night and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. So I had to turn on like some different lights. Like, typically I just use natural lighting for my videos. I'm like sitting in front of me. It's like a huge window that takes up like my whole wall. And that usually is enough light, but it absolutely is not today. And I have no other time to film this. So I had to kind of work with what I had. I don't have a ring light. So I'm sorry if the lighting seems off. I'm sorry if this like looks weird. Just bear with me. So the first book that I read is Wendy Walker's Emma in the Night, and I did a bestie book talk with my friend Georgia on this one. I will again link that video down below if you want to know like more details on it. But I ended up giving this one about a 4. I really enjoyed it. It's about these 2 teenage girls that go missing, and years later only one of them comes back. And she comes back with this really fantastical story and is urging the authorities to go and find her sister. So kind of takes you on this like psychological journey, and you know, they're looking at the family because some things aren't adding up, and what this girl's story says doesn't really add up either, and there's a psychologist involved, and she's kind of trying to unravel this story that this young girl is kind of providing in order to find her sister, but she doesn't really think that things are adding up. So it was really, really good. It was definitely a good mystery. I didn't see the ending coming, and yeah, overall I really recommend it. The next book that I read was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and this one is the first book that I read for Spookathon. This one I read for the challenge, read a book in a different time period, and it also counted for the purple cover too, but I did read another book for the purple cover challenge. So this one, surprisingly, I didn't really like all that much, to be honest with you, and I really wanted to like it because this is such a classic Halloween spooky story. I'd never read it before, but I think everyone like typically kind of knows the story of Frankenstein. I mean, like, they've made it into so many different movies, and even like there's kids versions and stuff like that. So I thought that I had known the story of this quite well, but I was really, really surprised to find that I didn't know it at all. First of all, I was shocked that the monster actually talks as much as he does. Like, I didn't think that he talked at all. I thought that he just like made like grunts and noises, and he was just kind of this, you know, being that was like basically like a toddler running around and didn't know anything. So I was really surprised that he was really well spoken, that he actually like could use his brain and actually like feel, and just, he was like a regular person, only he was made out of dead people's body parts. So I was very surprised with that. I found that this book was like way longer than it needed to be. Like, there was just so much description and parts like that that were really, really boring to me, that I kind of glossed over a little bit. Yeah, so I didn't think it needed to be as long, but the parts where action was actually happening was really interesting. I liked those parts. And I felt so bad for the monster. I just felt so bad for him. Like, he didn't ask to be brought here, and like the second that Dr. Frankenstein made him, just like, you know, sent him away, shunned him, and this poor monster is just like living on his own, just this creature that didn't ask to be brought here, this abomination. And so it was kind of sad for sure. But yeah, overall, I think I gave this one like maybe a 3 maybe even a 2.5. I didn't care for it that much. The next book that I read also for Spookathon was The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, and this one I absolutely loved. And I also did a full book review for this one. I did a non-spoilery part and then a spoilery part after it, and once again I will link it down below. But yeah, I absolutely loved this one. Gave it a raving 5 out of 5. This story follows Anna Fox. She's a recluse that lives in New York City, and she basically passes her time by spying on her neighbors. And one day a new family moves in across the street, and she witnesses something major and terrifying happening while she's spying on them. And she's kind of trying to figure out this mystery. Nobody believes her. Everybody's trying to convince her that this is all in her head and that she's just got all these mental issues. But she knows what she saw, and she is trying to prove this crime and find out what really happened while being confined to her home. Yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this one. There were several twists and turns that I did not see coming at all. It was fast paced. I vlogged my way through reading this, and I kept stopping, being like, holy crap, you guys, this happened. Holy crap, this happened. It was so good. I definitely recommend it. If you're into thrillers, definitely pick this one up. It is very popular right now for good reason. The next physical read that I had was Asylum by Madeline Rue. And this one, I ended up picking up the entire series on a book outlet order that I had recently. I just had read the synopsis of this one, and I thought that it looked really good, so I just kind of picked up the whole series. I'm kind of regretting that I did that. I'm going to continue on with the series because I bought the whole series, and I'm hoping that they'll maybe get better, but I think I just thought this was going to be more adult than it was. It's in YA, but it's definitely on the younger side. So I don't typically read like younger YA stuff. It's just written very immaturely. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm not even sure if that's what I'm meaning to say, but the writing style, yeah, it just feels immature. Like it feels like it's geared toward a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old. So it's a little bit it's just not what I was expecting it to be. I was hoping it would be a little bit more toward the older side of YA, maybe be a little bit more spooky. I found it to be very predictable. Almost right away, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And that's difficult for me. I typically am not able to guess the endings of books, especially right off the bat, but within the first couple of chapters, I knew what was going to happen in this book. So yeah, I mean, and it has different pictures in kind of like the Miss Peregrine books. If you guys can see that. But it has different pictures in it. Yeah, and basically it follows Dan, and he is going into a college program throughout the summer. He's in high school, and he's just like doing this summer college classes. And during their stay, the actual dorms are being renovated, so all these kids are put into this old asylum, and they're using that as the dorms. So once he gets there, he starts finding all these old creepy pictures, and he meets a couple friends, and they end up like breaking into this wing of the asylum that is not able to be used at all. It's completely blocked off, and they find their way in, and they go creeping around, and they start kind of like finding some mysteries that have been happening at this asylum, and there's like killer and like ghosts and like all kinds of like spooky things. But like I said, it was just a little bit immature for me. So I'm going to give it probably a 2.5-ish out of 5. And I am going to continue on with the series. I'm hoping that they will get better as they go. And maybe the next one won't be quite as predictable. So we'll see. I will say though that it was a quick read. That's for sure. Like all these pages are like, there's so many pages that have these photos, and then every chapter is a page like that. So there's lots of pages in here that have no text at all. So it was really quick to get through. So that was a plus about it. So the next two books, I probably like shouldn't even count them separately because they're children's books, basically. They're middle grade books, and these ones I read on Halloween Day. I read Goosebumps, Welcome to Dead House, and I read The Bailey School Kids, Dracula Doesn't Drink Lemonade. So I'm kind of going to classify these maybe together as being one book. So maybe I only read 9 books this month. I don't know, but First of all, we will talk about Welcome to Dead House, and this one I've been going through and collecting all my old childhood favorites. This is definitely one of them. So in this one, a brother and a sister named Amanda and Josh end up moving with their family to this house, like in a different town, and basically their family has inherited this house. But the house is very creepy. The entire town is very creepy. It's all very spooky, and the kids that they meet are not what they seem. I can't really give too much more away. So if you're looking just for like a fun, really like spooky read, this one was definitely great to read on Halloween Day. Definitely recommend this one. I mean, like, these books have my heart because I read them growing up in my childhood. So I'm definitely always going to give them a 5 out of 5 for sure. Along the same lines as the Goosebumps book was the Bailey School Kids one. And this one has a little bit of a younger audience than the Goosebumps ones do. But this one is Dracula Doesn't Drink Lemonade. And this series basically revolves around this group of 4 friends who think that all of the grown-ups in their town are weird. And they think that they're like all these different things. Like they think that there's a mermaid and that there's like a ghost and that like all these different characters show up in this town, and they kind of try to prove to themselves whether or not these adults really are what they think they are. So they get a new school counselor who they believe is Dracula. So they set about trying to prove whether or not their new guidance counselor is Dracula. It's very super cute. I loved these books growing up. I read them in about 4th grade, so they're about that age. Let me try and find, there's also illustrations in this books, and the font is quite big. So this took me about 15 minutes to read. Like, it's very, very quick now. So 5 out of 5 for this one. So that wraps up the physical reads portion of my wrap up, and we're going to get into the audiobooks that I read. The first audiobook that I read is Her Every Fear by Peter Swanson, and hopefully you guys can see. And this one I read for Spookathon. So this book follows the story of a woman who has been recently attacked by her ex-boyfriend, and she decides to swap apartments with her cousin whom she's never met. I believe he is in New York City and she is from London, Britain? Can't remember. But they're quite far ways, basically different worlds. And they decide to swap apartments for 6 months, and she just kind of wants to get away from her life after all this stuff has happened and try to kind of start fresh. So she goes to her cousin's apartment in New York, and immediately once she gets there, there is a dead body found in her apartment building, not in her suite, the suite across from her. And it turns out that her cousin was involved with this woman, and there's like talk of like a serial killer, and she's trying to figure out, is her cousin like the killer, where he's like at her apartment right now, and she's trying to figure out, going through all his stuff, like, did he kill this woman before he left? And it was very, very, very good. I give this one a 5 out of 5. It's a really great thriller. I read this one for the challenge to find a book with a spooky word in the title, and fear was the word that I chose. So yeah, I definitely give this one a 5 out of 5. Really great thriller. Definitely recommend picking it up. The next book that I read was also for Spookathon, and this one completed the challenge of reading a book with purple on the cover. And this one was City of Saints and Thieves by Natalie C. Anderson. And this one follows a young girl whose mother has been murdered, and she has basically been tossed out onto the streets, and so she's become a part of this gang, and she's on this mission to find her mother's murderer and bring him to justice. Her own form of justice, I guess I should say. So it follows her. This is a very character-driven story. It definitely shows the character arc from where she is in the beginning to where she is at the end, and you just like are rooting for this girl. She's gone through so much, and she is just trying to figure out what has happened, and she's trying to enact some justice for her mother. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. Again, this is another 5 out of 5 read. I had so many 5 out of 5 reads for Spookathon. I was very, very happy. I did very well with it. Yeah, it was a really good, it's a young adult book, and I definitely recommend that one as well. The next book that I read was The Book of Mirrors by E.O. Churovich. And this one looked really promising, but I ended up giving it probably about a 3, maybe a 3.5 out of 5. So it starts out where this literary agent receives this manuscript, and the manuscript basically is talking about a professor that was murdered years ago. And from what the literary agent can guess, that this author holds the secret of what happened, so he might have been involved or he knows who did the murder. And when he goes to request the full manuscript, he finds out that the author has passed away and his relatives cannot find the finished manuscript. So he hires a private investigator to kind of delve into this murder and see if they can piece together the rest of the story, because they really like the idea, they really like how it was written, and they want to go ahead with the project, but obviously they don't have the entire manuscript, so they're trying to piece together what happened. So they're investigating this murder. And it was okay. Like I said, it was about a 3.5. It was a really good idea, but it was executed a little bit poorly, and it went through different sets of characters. So the first part, you're looking through the eyes of the author, where he's telling the story of what happened, and then there's a part where you're looking through the eyes of the literary agent, and then there's a part where you're looking through the eyes of the private investigator, and then there's a part where you're looking through the eyes of the detective who originally investigated the case. So it gets kind of confusing as to who's doing what and each character's backstory, because they don't go into a lot of detail on each character's backstory, so they all kind of start to mesh together, especially the private investigator and the detective that originally investigated the murder. Their stories just kind of mesh, and it's kind of difficult to tell which part you're reading and whose point of view you're looking at. So that's what I found with that one. And the last audiobook and the last book that I read this month was My Story by Elizabeth Smart. And I think, like a lot of people, I am obsessed with true crime cases, missing persons, all that sort of stuff. I watch a lot of that stuff on YouTube. And the Elizabeth Smart story has captivated me ever since I very first found out about it. And I was definitely intrigued to hear her side of the story and find out exactly what happened to her those 9 months while she was missing. And it goes through everything. It goes through like before she got captured, where she actually met her captor, probably a couple of weeks before she actually got captured. Goes through everything, when he abducted her, what happened, where they stayed, where they moved, how she was treated, absolutely everything. And it was absolutely heartbreaking to read all about what she endured. But this woman is like unbelievable, because she is not letting this hold her back at all. She's not letting her captors steal any more of her life, and she has moved on. She's moved forward. She's done amazing things in her life. She's an advocate now for, children and people who have gone through this sort of thing in their past, and she just does amazing work. So it was definitely a 5 out of 5 read, and I definitely recommend it. If you're into true crime, definitely pick this one up. Well, you guys, those are the books that I read for the month of October. I had an amazing reading month, and I'm kind of like on the spooky train now. Like, I was doing so much like spooky reading for Spookathon and for the Halloween season that I'm just kind of like stuck in that mindset. So I'm going to be filming my November TBR coming up here right away, and I think you're going to see a few more spooky books on that TBR as well. Well, you guys, I hope you're having an awesome day. Please let me know in the comments down below what you ended up reading last month, and if you read any of the same books that I did. Did you participate in Spookathon? Let me know how it went. Hope you guys are having an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!